So I remember in the second book where there were a few very long-lined poems, and I remember thinking, sort of I was like scandalizing myself, like, what have I done here? And I knew they were right, but I did think, what would Derek think? My beloved teacher, what would he think? But I also
would he be
knew,
scandalized enough?
Oh, that's right. But I knew that I had to make these poems that my journey as a poet was, and it wasn't even like I said, now I'm going to break the line, but
don't you think that learning those kind of traditional way and then breaking away as you like is useful as a poet?
I think it's everything.
More weapon you have, better you are. Right?
Yeah. I believe in that. That's how I teach. I totally believe in that. So what I hope for is that also there's that, whatever that internal thing is that makes us write poems. Why do we do it? I don't know. Why do we keep doing it? I don't know. That there's an impetus, a quest. You're listening to unheard music. It's, well, okay, what does it need to look like? And I consider that a part of my journey as a woman writer too. I think also moving through life, certainly becoming a mother, and the way in which that takes you, even with all of the tremendous and humbling uncertainty of parenthood and motherhood, it takes you into another kind of authority and knowing, very profoundly.
It's very apparent in American Sublime.
Yeah,
Antebellum, towards the end of Antebellum Dream Book.
You can see that, huh? Yeah. I mean, I just felt like it just took me to a different place, a different place. So that's part of the woman's journey in the poetics, I think, as well. And I wonder, you mentioned my great Gwendolyn Brooks, my idol, my love, my great, not someone who taught me by hand, but someone whose poems continue to teach me. And people speak a lot about the change in her work in the 1960s as being about a change in the nation's politics, and that she was sort of becoming a Black Power poet then in a way. But I think maybe I have to write this because I think I am right about this. I think the changes in her work are more about being a woman, moving through life and getting to a place where her vision and her language was more and more distilled. We know this about elders, but we know this about elder women. That everything just gets pithier and more distilled, and that also because of the ways that societies of all kinds repress women, every society represses women to some degree. The older women get, they are able to find more ways to speak the truth. Women go through life seeing and knowing things that they often can't and don't say. But that doesn't mean that they don't have it and they don't know it.
Sometimes they probably grasp the truth without much fanfare. They hit upon the truth, and it just takes a long time for other people, other gender around them to catch up to that perspicacity.
Perspicacity, yes, exactly.
That lucidity.
Yeah, no, that's right. So, so I think that I now look at Gwendolyn Brooks's the development of her work as telling us more about a woman's life, actually, which kind of circles us back to where you started about do questions of gender or questions of race trump questions of gender, which I think is very interesting.
And in the foreword for your collection of Gwendolyn Brooks's poem, you do talk about how even Paul Dunbar said that I have to speak in this dialect, otherwise I wouldn't be heard. And I also wondered, and you kind of answered my question, if that also happens as a woman, that you work with an arsenal that we have mostly picked up from the poetic world, which is mostly predominated by male gender. And if we are forced to use that arsenal till we are ready to break free from it and find that pithy, that clear voice of ourselves.
I agree with that, maybe more than half. But I think also what it's important to remember, in the time when I was first writing poems and studying with Walcott, I was very obsessed with Sylvia Plath. And
I think that's a beautiful poem that you wrote.
Oh, well, with her, it was her poems, but more it was her whole life example. Not, I wasn't enchanted with, you know, the whole cult
The
of death
mystic of
thing. That didn't,
Yeah.
I'm really not
Yeah.
interested in that. But her ferocious appetite for poetry and her ferocious female ambition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, she was not messing around writing those poems. She wanted to be published. She wanted to be out there. She believed she could do everything. She was ferocious. And so I would read like her letters, her journals,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
all the, like the whole, that was
Mhm.
the Sylvia thing that interested me. And so I think what Sylvia teaches us about women poets is that the hunger for the male tradition, the love for the male tradition is, you know, sometimes that work, it is precious to us
Mhm.
because
Because human
we aspire
experience.
to whatever greatness looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to think about female ambition and the wish and the will to do whatever it takes to be a better writer
Mm-hmm.
is part of what I would put into what you said.
Mm-hmm. You know, coming back to Venus Hottentot, I mean, your poems have had always such a strong narrative component to it. Just digressing for a little bit, you know, you made an observation about Gwendolyn Brooks's books, saying that each of her books were more successful when they they had one long poem in it, and the rest of the poems in the book were arranged around that. Now,
Yeah.
thinking of Venus Hottentot, thinking of Ali's voice
Yep.
in Antebellum Dream Book, and of course Amistad
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in American Sublime. I wonder, it seems to follow similar pattern, and I kind of wonder, in each case, in each of this, each long narrative poem, if in terms of the whole organization of the whole book, are you also telling us about a bigger narrative, something less apparent?
That's very interesting. I mean, you know, Rita Dove, another poet that I have learned so much from, and who I was really thinking a lot about when I was a young writer. She tends not to have the big long poem. The thing I learned from her about books, she said such an interesting thing. She doesn't think that books should have, I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but 3 sections. Because she said then you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there's so much pressure on each of those units. And I thought about that especially with American Sublime,
Last
with
section
that little last one. I thought,
Yeah.
that's right, I need to throw it off a little bit. You need to torque the ending of the book so that it doesn't feel tidy. That's very important. But I think, you know, I do like a long poem. I mean, you know, every few years I seem to find myself in something long, something serial, something that doesn't get resolved with just one little poem, and I have to keep going. And so I think probably what happens is that then when it comes time for a book, you know, I think some of it's probably almost accidental that, well, there's this big one, and what do you do with it?
Okay.
And when you've got this big one, it's like the elephant right there. Well, okay, what are you going to put around it? I mean, you can't not think about it. You have to and you have to ask yourself, as with Amistad and American Sublime, okay, well, do I open with it? Do I close with it? Do I send, you know, where does it go? You know, it's a sofa in the living room.
Exquisite
And the other things,
sofa.
but the other things are, you know, there's a chair and there's a lamp, and you put those around it in some kind of way. But I like, I'm interested in epic, and I'm interested in spread and large stories, and I think that probably I'm interested in that in its particular American iterations, I think. Because also one thing I do realize about my work over time is how much of an Americanist I am, how Americanness is an ongoing obsession and topic for me.